All right, well, it's your show.
Yeah, it's your show. I had a nice weekend. The Monroe brothers were out to the castles, did the leaves. Well, they did the front yard and around the house, and they're coming this coming weekend, weather permitting, to start in the backyard and get the leaves out of the creek. They were. I was happy to have them back. They're industrious folks, as we've mentioned before, and also over the weekend, Bobby Fulton came down to Louisville, visited with his son Dylan. Bobby Fulton is one of the few people that has visitation privileges at the castle. And I've made a promise to him. I said, if I ever, and this is a conditional promise, anything that begins with if, it's a conditional promise. If I ever, again, do a live personal appearance in public, advertised in front of the people, it will be on one of his shows.
Well, hold on. You can't promise that.
Why not?
We need to make sure Bobby can put up bond, that he can have enough money to secure a major thing like a Jim Cornette appearance. You can't give that away. You're too nice. You're too nice.
I'm gonna. Besides, I didn't say anything about giving it away. I mean, there might be some money changing hands, but I don't care about that because as the longtime listeners will recall, when last we left our castaways, I sound like the Lost in Space voiceover guy. I need one more show. Because if I have one more show and I accomplish my 40th anniversary, if it's in 2022, I get my 40th anniversary. That would be even 1982 to 2022 as a professional in the wrestling industry. And at the same time, I would get my fifth decade, 80s, 90s, zeros, teens, and 20s. And at the same time, if you consider when I made money from professional wrestling for the first time versus when I became a performer, then I would be getting my sixth decade because you could add the 70s. One show and can encompass all of that, and then I can be done with everything because I got the OCD for those even numbers and those milestones. I started to say landmines. That's not it might be, but it's a milestone.
When you say one more show means working ringside?
Well, no, just doing something on a wrestling show. I've retired from managing, but to do something on I consider it something on a show.
Why don't you go back to where you began and start taking photos of ringside again? We could sell them for like $15 a pop to, what is it? What's that magazine in England? $15 a pop. That's big money for photos.
Well, what's that magazine in England is the technical title. They call it WTMIE for short. But no, because see, then here's the thing. My knees, I can't kneel down at ringside anymore. That would be, and I can't get up if I am kneeled down. So I can't do that. That's why I quit managing, because I can't. It's like, okay, we're going to see the Rolling Stones, but Mick can't sing anymore, so he's just going to stand there and shake the tambourine. If I can't, I thought about this, as a matter of fact, sometime last year in a bored moment. I can't imagine when that was that I was actually bored. But I started thinking about all the things that I used to do working ringside as a manager. Not just bumps, but running around, jumping up on the apron of the ring, running down to distract the referee, or, working the people or whatever. And I thought, okay, let me examine this piece by piece and determine now the probability that I could do any of this shit without hurting myself. Even just the start of the match, jumping down from the apron to the floor. And I came up with a 20 to 30% probability that I could hurt something or re-aggravate something that I've previously hurt, including my bad shoulder, my bad neck. You remember my back. I bent over a few months ago, stuck a flag in a yard and crawled around on my hands and knees in the house for 2 weeks. So I determined that all of those things are not calculated risks anymore. They're just probabilities that I'll herniate myself or throw my shoulder out or my knee will go out or whatever. And that's why I'm not managing it, much less taking bumps.
You could do the wheelchair gimmick.
Then people would think I was stealing from Ron Wright. A poor old crippled up old ex-wrestler just trying to make a living, and all those mean wrestlers that crippled him up like that. People would think I was stealing from him.
All right.
Anyway, so there's going to be I'm not doing it for the money. I'm just doing it for the round number and the landmine or the milestone, the milestone. And I don't care about the money, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be doing it because there's still the matter of I would have to get on an interstate highway somewhere to do that, no matter where it was. And I've successfully stayed off all interstate highways, except when I picked Stacy up from the airport and when I'd taken her when she went to California for her mom's surgery. That's the only time I've been on the interstate in since the last time she went to California. Maybe they'll come and have the show in my backyard.
I think that would work out pretty well. You could have your neighbor as the lead heel. But let me ask you this. If you're going to do something on a wrestling show, whenever it is, it's not imminent, would you want to do something with guys that you have worked with in the past to celebrate the past in that way, I guess, and kind of close the book on that chapter of your life? Or would you rather be doing something with someone who's contemporary, who you endorse, to kind of say that, here's my way of endorsing the future of wrestling?
Well, you know what? When you started asking that question, I was going to say, well, on the part about working with guys who I have history with and were my contemporaries, the problem is if there ain't that many left anymore. If I go to where most of those are, I wouldn't be in fit condition to do anything myself to begin with. But then when you uttered the second part of the question and you said guys that you endorse today, well, fuck, there may be less of them than there still is living, breathing examples of 80s wrestling. So I don't know. That's a good question. It's one of those things that it just happened.
Let me ask you this.
Thumbs up.
Who's the first person you hit with the tennis racket?
Magnum TA.
Who should be the last person you hit with the tennis racket?
Shit stain.
No, but it has to be someone you'll work with. It can't be someone you actually want to hurt.
It can't be a shoot?
No, people
actually, as Magnum will tell you, my first one on him was a shoot too. I actually left a scar on him from that one.
How did you hit him? Did you hit him across?
No, here's the thing. I mean, this has been lost to time, I guess, because I hadn't thought about it till you just brought it up. But I'm carrying a tennis racket, but I didn't know how to work with it at first. As far as in what manner I should strike people with it, right? Because, I'm exposing my own business now, but what the fuck? Here are the mechanics of the tennis racket shot. Here you go, folks. This is first time. All this information's been in the same place at the same time. So I get the idea from the movie that I saw after our first Mid-South television. I come back to Nashville. We go see movie. It happens to be one of those teen movies, the early 80s. The rich kid in the crowd is carrying the badminton racket. Gives me the idea. So I get a tennis racket because a badminton racket is not that formidable, right? And the next time we go to the next Mid-South TV, which was the second one we did, which would have been mid-December of 1983, I showed it to Watts. I said, hey, I mean, he understood it immediately. All I'd say was, hey, manager gimmick. They've done canes, they've done umbrellas, or whatever. Tennis racket. I'm a rich kid. Yeah, boom, done.
You knew you needed a weapon at ringside.
Well, and that's the thing is I knew because the boys had told me, not just Bobby and Dennis, but the guys working the Louisiana Territory, my first TV in, we've talked about, they've joked, oh, they're going to kill you. And that's why I was thinking about what can I carry? Because several of the guys had brought up, carry something, have something. So anyway, I started using that there, but then I realized, well, okay, how am I going to do blah, blah, blah. So at first, the way that you would hurt someone the most with the racket is to turn it sideways and hit them over the head with the frame. which became known as the Mark shot, a.k.a. the Buzz Sawyer shot, right? And don't you hit me like a fucking mark. Don't you hit me like a fucking mark. So, but that would be the way that you would, damage somebody as turnips, but that's also very hard to work, believably. And then there's the gut shot and, or the throat shot, right? Which I didn't try for a while till I got the hang of things. But anyway, so it was a work in progress. And a lot of first couple of times that we did a finish with it, the baby face would be rolling one of the midnight up and the midnight would drop down flat and the baby face's head would come through the ropes right on the O'Connor roll up. If the heel drops flat, the baby face falls forward through the ropes over the second rope, and I would whack the guy with the edge of it, but where the shaped part went around his neck, right? So it wasn't going to bust anything open. And that served, that was all right. But then I got Magnum. We're getting heat on him, right? He's down. It's after the match. Two's been thrown out of the ring. Bells ringing, the people are screaming, and I'm going to take the stem of the racket, the handle, the stalk of it, and I've got it in my left hand where I've got my left hand even with the bottom of it, and I jump up in the air and drop to my knees, and I'm going to bring it down somewhere in the vicinity of his chest. You can see what I'm doing now, straight down, right, like I've stuck him right down in the throat with the thing. But he's also green, and he won't admit this to this day, the old "you moved." But as the boys were kicking him and everything, he sat straight up, and I didn't know it was coming. And when he sat up, I was coming down, and I brought the end of that thing right down on the end of his chin, boom, and busted his chin open. His chin starts bleeding. He's like, shit. Okay, well, that looked good. But anyway, so he's reminded me about that a number of times. But then, God, finally, I'm trying to think who the first person. I hit somebody over the back, but I tried to work it. And then I realized, well, wait a minute. I don't need to work that because it's flat. It's like a chop. And then you also have to, sometimes I had to modify. If I had one of the fancy racket covers with a fancy outfit for a pay-per-view or whatever, the problem is the fancy racket covers weren't made out of that vinyl like the real ones were that makes the chopping sound on a sweaty back. So,
because it always made a great sound when you did it. Yeah.
But so basically just playing with it for the first month or so that we were down there, I think. And see, that's the thing. I wouldn't use it in every match because Watts did not want even the manager to interfere in every match or the gimmick to be used in every match, because then it didn't get as much heat. But then, of course, later on, as we evolved, people kind of, even when they didn't like us, they still expected to see one of those shots. It got over some, to the point where if they didn't see me use it, they were kind of like, fuck. More likely they wanted Ricky or Robert to shove it up my ass, but whatever. But anyway, so we played with it. And the first month or two that we were there in Mid-South, I hit more fans with it than I did the boys. And then, it became about even.
Was it just Tulsa and a couple other towns that you had a horseshoe or whatever it was in the racket, or was it every house show town?
No, it wasn't everyone, because at first, the first time that I had loaded it, we got in some kind of fucking Hey Rube in Tulsa, I think the first time. And I just, you know what, this was like, we'd only been there 6 weeks. And I remember that what I did was I went and the ideas that I had, I got the dog chain, a dog choker chain, and duct taped that in without the cover on it around the edge of the racket. So it added weight, but it also added hardness to the edge of the racket, and slipped the cover on over it. And then also this lasted once. I actually got tin snips and cut, I guess that's what they're called, the things that cut to tin and aluminum or whatever, and cut the cookie sheets to shape the racket. So I had an actual metal plate on each side of the racket with the chain around the edge and duct tape that. And you could bend a stop sign in half with a good swing on that thing, right? It was fucking stiff. That was for the rough towns for protection. But one night in Baton Rouge, this, like I said, this was real early on. And this is what made Bobby quit. Bobby used to say, here, I'll go in front. Give me the racket. When we'd come back from the ring, you get behind me and Dennis is going to bring up the rear, right? So that way Bobby and the guy in front has the weapon in his hand. Well, that evolved quickly because besides the fact that they realized, you know, they're taking more shots at me, so I need the fucking club. But also, this guy came and fucking socked Bobby, and he turned around and the guy ran off into the crowd as we're coming back in a Centroplex. And Buddy Landell, who was riding with us at that time, used to watch our matches so that if we had any trouble, he'd come out and help. He sees the guy hit Bobby and runs and fucking, it was like he was running across a football field full of people that a broken field tackled this fucking guy. And as he brought him up, he had his arms kind of like in a surfboard and the guy was on his knees. And Dennis came right afterwards and football kicked the guy up under the jaw. And Bobby had the racket and hit him over the top of the head with it, with the cookie sheet and the chain duct taped around it under the cover, and bent the entire racket. It broke the frame because that was a wooden one at that time. And that's when I switched to the metal ones later on. It cracked the frame, but it bent the cookie sheet. It looked like a fucking kitchen pot on top of the guy's head, right? It was in the shape of a head. And Bobby gave me the racket back. He said, I'm going to kill somebody. I don't want it anymore.
Dennis wouldn't have minded.
And well, yeah, did that's what he agreed that I should probably have it. So that's what happened there.
Whenever you bought a tennis racket, how often, because you had to go through a lot of them, how often did whoever it was in the sporting goods store try to talk to you about tennis? Did that happen?
A couple of times, especially like at Charlotte at the mall. Oh, what? I'm just playing around. I just want to, because they'll try to upsell you, right? Well, that's the cheapest one. Yeah, I know.
10 of them.
Yeah, I would. Did
you ever buy them in bulk?
No, well, because back then the house show rackets. Once I had 4 or 5, if they bent, like if I hit Animal 3 or 4 nights in a row, it would be bent badly. But I just get either Hawk or Animal, here, bend this back for me. Look at what you've done. And they just, you know, and then I kept I still have the one that I used on TV that fit all the decorative covers that you've seen, all the, you know, the TBS clips and the Santa Claus tennis racket cover and all that stuff. That was the same racket because it was a wood frame. I'd gotten it early on. Had my first couple of fancy racket covers made for it, and I just, as a good luck charm, I would use that one for those fancy covers. But when I didn't have to really hit somebody or knock them out, usually, whatever. But no, and sometimes I'd send my wife to buy one or whatever. Because then, even though the mall in Charlotte was at the ritzy part of town, you know, I couldn't just walk around freely without getting recognized. I was Cornette buying the cheapest racket in fucking store. So
a mob of girls attacked a guy at Dick's Sporting Goods today for selling tennis rackets to Jim Cornette. They were chanting rock and roll, rock and roll,
rock and roll, rock and roll.
All right.
Hey,
did I
tell you about this? Well, go ahead. Are we done on the racket?
No, well, I was just going to say you didn't answer. Who do you want to be the last person you hit with the racket?
Oh, but it can't be a shoot.
No, it has to be someone, because you said you want to work a show. It has to be in that context.
Whatever. Ricky Morton's son is wrestling now. I did once hit Paul Morton in an angle when we came back and worked Memphis with the Fabs. So that could be something, because even though I'm not mad at the young man, I could say that I've actually whacked 3 generations of the same family. That might be a record that would, When's the last time in professional wrestling that 3 generations of the same family have been hit over the head with a tennis racket?
I can't say that's ever happened before.
Well, there you go. I could go out once again with another record. Call Guinness.
But what about like going out with nuclear heat? Like that's the last time people see you do something and it's just crazy heat.
Well,
hit a cat.
No. Well, depends on what the cat was doing. There's some cats have a fucking obnoxious personality.
They're
now.
kind of condescending. Yeah, I know.
They can be condescending, but no. The only at this point, if anybody sees me live in person anywhere but an AEW show, they're just happy that I'm there and I'm still around. So I can't really get nuclear heat unless I was to go and make a tennis racket popsicle out of old Kenny Olivier. But that probably is highly unlikely. Not the fact that I wouldn't want to make the popsicle out of him, or probably could, but that it would have to occur on a sanctioned program of theirs. So I don't know where else I'd get nuclear heat. Besides maybe at just the local post office.
But when you throw someone like Ricky Morton's son out there into the mix, you're basically saying you would like it to be a younger person or someone contemporary who's of the modern day as opposed to it being Ricky Morton, let's say.
Well, no, I just thought it would be funny to fuck with his whole family. I'd be happy hitting Ricky.
Why don't you do like the Inoki thing where you stand in the middle of the ring and they just have a line of people come in and you just slug everyone with the racket?
Yeah. Everybody walks in and turn your back. Pow! Nick, turn your back. Pow! Nick, turn your back. Pow!
Sponsored by Stephen P. New. We can make this work.
Yes.